Hi, Rick.
Hello there. How you doing? Hi. Good to see you.
You too. I'm Beth Gantz. I'm a small business coach with the Small Business Development Center at Lorain County Community College. And thank you for joining us for Let's Chat. So I'm joined today with Rick Slark from Slark Consulting Group. And I want to talk today about resiliency, Rick, but please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your business.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. You've probably seen us before. We've done some of these before. And I'm an advisor with the Lorain County and love working up there with a lot of the clients. And hopefully some of the clients are listening to this, and we hope so. And I also own my own consulting business that specializes in strategy and businesses who have found their profitable market and are growing. And because of that growth, they experience some problems. So I spend a lot of time there, as well as helping with the Small Business Development Center, growth clients and those areas. So it's a real pleasure.
Yeah, no, thank you. I really enjoy our chats, and I know our clients love working with you. So, we've talked about this topic for a while now, and it's about resiliency in your business. And, with everything that happens, not only locally, globally, just, supply chain issues, pricing, all of the things, right? How do you define resilience in business? Like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think one of the definitions, I've kind of searched the definitions, and I found one from Cisco that I think is probably as good as can be. And so I'll just kind of read that definition, and then I'll share a story real quick. So they say that resilience is an organization's ability to respond and adapt quickly to disruption or significant unplanned changes. So I love that, right?
Yeah.
And these changes that could threaten its operations, its people, its assets, its brand, or its reputation. So these are unplanned things that occur, whether it's a disruption of, there's a multitude of types that we'll talk about in a little bit, but that's kind of it. And a perfect example, I think, of it is back in 1891, there was a company, it still is a company, called Victorinox, and they made these little red knives that we call the Swiss Army knife. And at that time, in 1891, they began making those. And that little knife became 95% of their gross revenue throughout the years. And some of you may have one of those in your pocket or laying around in a box somewhere, because so many people have those. But their world changed on September 11th, 2001, when the Twin Towers were hit, and everything changed for that business. Because, as you know, but the airlines no longer let you put certain things on the plane. You couldn't carry a knife, and all the regulations and all things began to happen, and their business began to plummet. The sales of these knives began to plummet, and they had to really quickly figure out how they were going to deal with this. It's an unplanned, like the definition, unplanned significant disruption. So they had to figure out how they were going to handle this. Well, they were always known for quality and things of that nature. And what they decided to do was start making watches, luggage, keychains. And after September 11th, they began to manufacture those. And today, they are still strong, still running strong, profitable. But the knife, the Swiss Army knife, is only 35% of their gross revenue now.
Wow.
And these other products have taken the place. And that's what we're talking about, is building resiliency. They were able to adapt quickly and still survive. And that is as good a definition as you can get, really.
I love that story. I've heard that before from you. And I always think like, wow, right? Because it's so easy to go, oh, this must be it. It must be it must be over, right? When it doesn't necessarily have to be, and probably
Sure.
most of the time really doesn't have to be, as long as you're open to looking outside the box and adapting, and what else could we produce or create. And so I really do like that that
Yeah,
story.
let me put something in here. I was just thinking about this. I run into a lot of clients that the minute they hit a wall or they hit a real difficulty, that they get that it's some sign that they are,
Mhm.
number one, doing something wrong, or this wasn't meant to be, right?
Right.
And let me just say this, business is hard.
Yeah.
Business is hitting a lot of walls.
Mm.
And just because you hit something difficult, a difficult spot in your business, that doesn't mean that you are a horrible owner. It doesn't mean that um, you're doing everything wrong. It simply means that you're in business, and
Right.
business is hard. It really is hard. I was talking to a guy the other day, and he called me and he said, I just have to talk to somebody. He goes, I've lost 4 jobs today. These were jobs that I had planned that were going to take me through the end of the year. And I was sitting really, really well. And today I had 4 calls and everybody canceled of these 4 jobs. And now I got to go find work. I got to hustle, right? And that's exactly what you have to do. Now, is that a bad owner? No, things happen. And that's what we're talking about, is to be able to be resilient.
Right.
So I just felt like I had to say that, is that you're not horrible if things aren't going right for you right now. It just is business. Things are tough and you got
Exactly.
to work through it.
No, I'm so glad you said that, because I think, you know, I think that's the first thing we go to is like, oh, I'm done. I'm bad at this, or no one wants what I have, or something like that. And sometimes I'll say to a client, or, I'm in business, I'll say to myself, okay, let's just sleep on it for 24 hours. Let's maybe have our moment of all of those feelings. And then tomorrow's a new day, and we have value. We have the ability to adapt, or just, do that research, or what's new, or for that person, who could I go contact today to maybe find some business for the rest of the year, or something like that. So
Yeah. So
yeah.
his exact words were to me. So let me finish that story. So he said to me, I'm going home and I'm going to bed. I'm going to sleep. And it was late, 6 o'clock in the evening. I just can't do anymore today, and I'll deal with it tomorrow. Right. So he went home, got a good night's rest. I talked to him later. He was on the phone the next day. He was on the phone all day making calls. Right. He
Mhm.
didn't quit. He didn't lay down. He was on dialing for dollars, if you want to say, to
Right.
try to make it happen. And he scheduled a few, right? And I'm sure if I talk to him today, he's probably working back toward getting all those spaces filled up. But the reality is, it's just tough. Things happen.
It is so tough, right? Right. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Yes, it's tough.
Yeah.
Life happens, things happen, and you definitely have to be able to be resilient and adapt. So why is it essential to purposely build like resilience into our businesses?
Well, that's why, because
That's
things
why.
are going to constantly happen,
Right.
right? So if you think that COVID was it and we're smooth sailing from here on out, no, it's not. There's going to be something else. So in the past, let's talk about some of the causes for this. So you have war, right? You have geopolitical things that are happening. So right now you have what's happening in Israel. You have what's happening in Ukraine. You have what's happening with China. We have an election year coming up. We have so many things that just geopolitically are happening. We have natural disasters like COVID, like the tsunami that hit Toyota back in 2001, I believe it was. And
Right.
then again in like 2011. I
Yeah.
can't remember those dates, but all of these natural disaster things are going to happen. And the cost of goods, economic crisis of 2008, all of these things are going to continue to happen. There's always going to be a wave coming against you, the next wave. And you have some people that, would say, well, I'm going to hold off until all of this crisis is over. Well, you'll be waiting forever, because if you think, like when COVID happened, we talked about this a little bit. There were people that said, well, I'm just not going to do anything, and I'm going to wait till everything goes back to normal. And now we realize there is no new normal. Things are, or there is no normal like it used to be. Everything is different. The way people respond, trends, all of those things change. And all of those different things affect business and will continue to do so. And that's why you need to have a business that can take a punch and get back up quickly and get moving on.
Yeah. And I know it's hard sometimes for like the mom and pop restaurant or something like, maybe someone who's not serving who a product or service that is national or something like that to
Yeah.
think like, well, that doesn't affect me, but it really does. These things affect your business. So when I had my retail store, if gas went up a little bit, no one came in, or, something would happen. Like they power sprayed my the windows one day and water seeped into my storefront. I mean, that's something that simple. I had to figure out how to deal with that, and it affected my sales for a week, and the store flooded a little bit. Like that, it's such a small simple thing, but it's not, it's global, it's everything. Like, these things to adapt, be resilient. How are you going to deal with all of that? I had to buy new inventory. I had to put out money before I could get reimbursed from my landlord, right? Like I
Yeah,
had to have
for
the cash
sure.
flow for that, So
And the
yeah,
other thing is, let's say, for instance, you're a service business of some kind, a coach or a yoga instructor, or you have a gym, or you have this. Those are all items that are not necessities, right? And so if the prices go up and we have inflation, people now have to make a decision, right?
right.
Am I going to pay for this? And be able to, which is something that's not a necessity. So people do it does come into play, all of these
Sure.
different things for sure.
Sure.
But
Right.
and we sound kind of negative, and I don't mean to, but I mean it's real, right? It's gonna
It's
happen.
true. Yeah.
But there are some ways that you can build resiliency into your business, right?
Right.
And so
Yeah.
there
I
are
wanted
there
to
are
know
some
how,
ways to do that.
yeah, how do we build that resiliency in?
Yeah. So I listed 9 things that kind of you could do, but I want to set something up and say this. During the time of resiliency, when you're building resilience into your business, and let's say we hit another difficulty coming up in a year, 60 to 70% of your business is going to be the same, right? So it's not like you're going to totally overhaul everything of your business. And I think this is a really important piece to keep in mind, that when we're talking about some of these changes, which I'm going to, and doing some of these things, it's not like you have to do every one of them, right? I don't want you to be overwhelmed by that, right? I want you to understand that 60 to 70% of your business is going to stay like it is, but making a few minor adjustments, and some are major adjustments, but by doing at least a few of these will enhance your ability to be resilient, right? So if you're like me, a perfectionist, you think I got to check all these off, right? Which is almost impossible to do, and not very many businesses do it. So I want you to know, as we go through this, just know that you just get a couple of them. Just add a couple of these, right?
Right.
And you and I haven't talked about this, but I have a checklist that if somebody wants it, I'd be happy to send it to them.
Oh, fantastic. That's
Yeah,
great. So
or whatever.
no,
So
it's
whenever
very,
you're listening
absolutely.
to this, and we'll
Yeah.
give you the email or whatever later. So,
Sure.
all right, let's talk about a few ways real quick
All right.
that the strategies to build that. First of all, is like have a diverse revenue streams, right? So
Right.
have different markets, different products that are not just in one basket. And I hate that word, but I see so many clients that have 70 or 80% of their revenue comes from one client or from one industry or whatever. And I would really encourage you to look at ways in your business that you could sell a product in a different area or different market, or have a couple things like that. So diversifying the revenue stream is certainly important. And I will say, if you're a coach or if you're starting a coaching business, which a lot of people are these days, you need something that is bringing cash flow in on a regular basis, because keeping the pipeline full as you start your business is going to be a really hard way to make a living right off the bat. So you really need to find some revenue streams that will sustain you as you're building your practice. So that's one. The other thing is to plan multiple scenarios. So I always was fascinated by this. When we plan your business, we always plan for the best scenario. This is what's going to happen, right? And what you should be doing is planning like in 3 scenarios. So like, for instance, okay, this is what the best case scenario would be this, but I get that things don't always work out. So the worst case scenario would be this. And then what's probably going to happen is somewhere in between. And you think about those and you build a strategy for all 3 of those. So you know what happens. You don't just build for the best case scenario, because it takes longer than you think it's going to take, and it costs more money than you think it's going to take. Right. So whatever it is you're starting, it's just going to cost you more, and it's going to take you a lot longer.
Right.
And go ahead.
I just want to chime in for 1 second and
Sure.
tell everyone who's listening, that is probably one of the best pieces of advice you'll ever receive. And I would say that other business owners would probably tell you the same thing, that it's not all roses. There are thorns along the way. And if you can plan for those, and it's hard to know how to plan for those, and because you're guessing, right? But you can do it through market research and through, other people who have similar businesses, and through coaching, which we can help you do. But really to understand that it's going to ebb and flow more than you think. And it's like building a house. There's always a cost you were not expecting.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. No question about that. So the first one would be diverse revenue stream. Second is creating different scenarios so that you're kind of ready for what might happen. The third is supply chain management if you're up and running. And what I mean by that is you might want to have not just one supplier for this or that, but you might want to have a couple suppliers in case something goes bad, that there's another one that you could turn to. So managing your supply chain is always a good idea, in the sense that you have different options available to you. We could go into that a lot more. The other one is digital transformation. So look at your business, do just an analysis on your business. And what I mean by that is when COVID hit, there were a lot of stores that didn't have any online presence, right? And everybody's struggling and hurrying to try to build an online store with Shopify. Shopify went crazy during that time, and a lot of other places. So, and just analyzing your technology, how could you keep track of customers better? How could you communicate with customers better, right? With less friction, those kind of things. How can you automate things going on in your business? How could you do that? So I think the digital transformation is really, really important as well, for sure. The other way, if you happen to have employees, just paying attention to them and the well-being of your employees. And here's what they want. They want to be trained. They want to develop skill. They want to have opportunity for advancement, and they want flexibility. And so if you can begin to think about those things, I know some of you don't have employees and that won't matter to you, but if you do, those are really important things that you would want to do. Number 6, and this is kind of what you were talking about. Number 6 is the financial risk management. It's really important that you don't spend all your profit now.
Yeah.
So for instance, if a crisis hits, and this happened a lot, when the crisis hit, and we'll go back to COVID because it's most recent and fresh in our minds. If you didn't have some money put away, you couldn't do some of these things. You couldn't pay a little higher price for a different supplier, right? If your supplier couldn't deliver, but you had another one, but they cost more, maybe you didn't have the money for that. Maybe you didn't have a money to put a website up, right? With
Right.
Shopify store and all that. That's why it's really important for you to really handle your cash flow now, manage your business well, and put a little bit away so that you have what we call dry powder for when difficult times come and you need to make an adjustment. You have some cash to be able to do that without using your credit cards and without doing, if at all possible. Sometimes you have to do that, right? But
Right.
if you don't, that's one way to do that. Number 7 would be focus on your customers, really being customer centric. I found so many people that, especially small businesses, their hours, the way they run the business is built around their world, right? Not around the customer's world.
Right.
And you really want to focus in on your customer, providing them the services they need with as little friction as possible. So that'd be your hours. That'd be the way that they buy stuff from you, whether it's online or whatever. You just want to reduce as much friction as you can and really focus on the needs of the customers. Keep in communication with them. If you don't have a communication system to your customers where you're doing like a monthly email or, a couple weekly emails or something, you have to put that in place where you're building some customer centric. I think it's really important there. Number 8 is building a crisis management communication. Like if things go bad, how are we going to communicate with one another? Right. Really important to have that before. I don't know if you guys did this, but when I was in school, we did these tornado drills.
Oh yeah.
And yeah.
Get under your desk. Like,
Yeah,
what is
get
that
under the
gonna do?
desk or whatever.
Or like in the hallway.
Yeah. Or we did a fire drill, right? And we all loved that because it disrupted school and we could go outside for a little bit. So what were they doing? They were simply practicing in case of an emergency. And so that's what we're talking about here is this. How are we going to, in an emergency, connect with our employees or our vendors or our customers and one another? How are we going to communicate that? I think is really, really important.
Yeah.
And
I just have, I'm sorry. I just have to, like, this is something that I'm in a creative business. I'm left-handed. If I break my left hand and I don't have a backup plan, what am I going to do? So it's so like, sometimes I think people, a small business might think, well, this is for bigger businesses, but it's not. I'm a solopreneur and it is something I think about all the time. Do I have enough inventory? Do I have that backup plan? Who could ship for me? Who could whatever, right? So it's that simple it doesn't have to be,
it does have to be this big
or
plan.
10 employees to have a crisis plan, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then finally, the last one, and this one is a little bit is for people that have multiple people is having a cross pollinated group in your business where you communicating with them, and we call it cross functional. But in other words, a lot of businesses get siloed, right? The sales and the operation get siloed from each other and they don't like each other and blah, blah, blah. And I think it's a good plan if you're a little bit bigger business to have somebody one person from most of your departments on a team together that looks at this and communicates this stuff. Right? Because a lot of times the frontline people know a lot better what's happening in the business and the problems in the business than somebody that's less involved in that. So having some of those people from all departments in a team, I think, is a really good way to help come up with solutions and communicate. So those are kind of the 9 things that I think are really important in building resilience. And remember, I like what you said. You don't have to be, a 5 or 6 member group. You could be a solopreneur, but you have to figure out and think through these things. And not all of them are going to be applicable, right? And
Right.
that's why I said at the beginning is you pick which ones that are most applicable to you, and then you work
Mhm.
on those. It doesn't take, you don't have to do all of them, but
Right.
just a little bit will help you in the long run.
Yeah. No, this is such a great topic and so necessary. And it doesn't matter what's happening when, this is always needed, right?
Yeah, for
So
sure.
it doesn't matter. It's just always something you should focus on. And I probably would start with if I were going to pick a couple, I'd start with the customer, my financial health, as well as my revenue streams. That's probably where I would start. I mean, they're all important, but we know that if you don't know your numbers, you're likely not to succeed. So, or your
Yeah, and I
customer.
think that'll be different for everybody depending
Sure.
on where they are and what's going on in their business and stuff. The point, I guess, is just simply being aware that you have to build some resilience.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Rick. And if
That was
you
great.
are interested in meeting with the SBDC, you can certainly email us, and our contact information will be on this Let's Chat. So I look forward to chatting again soon.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks.